Senator from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon. My name is Jon Husted, and I have the distinct honor of serving the great state of Ohio as one of its United States senators. Over the past 25 years, I have been blessed to serve the people of Ohio as a state representative, Speaker of the House, Secretary of State, and most recently as Lieutenant Governor. I am constantly reminded of the sacrifices generations of Americans and Ohioans have made in the hope that they will leave their country in a better place than they found it. And it is this pattern of sacrifice that I've also witnessed throughout my life growing up in the Midwest. So, Mr. President, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the sacrifices others have made that have led to this moment in time and our responsibility as Americans to our children and to our country. So let me start at the beginning, at least for me. I was born in 1967, which was part of one of the most turbulent decades in American history. My start in life reflected those turbulent times. My birth mother lost her husband in Vietnam, in the Vietnam War, and she found herself with multiple children to care for without anyone to share that responsibility. Then she learned that there was another baby on the way, and that baby was me. While I can never truly know how the circumstances affected her and why she made the choice that she did, I'd like to believe that out of a loving heart and full of courage and selflessness, that she gave me a chance to be adopted. My birth certificate reports that I was born in Michigan, but let me reassure you, I was made in Ohio. You see, during the fall of 1967, after 2 months in a foster home, I was blessed to become the first child of two humble, hardworking people from Northwest Ohio, Jim and Judy Husted. Even then, amid the protests and the upheaval happening across the nation, my parents were full of hope and optimism as they welcomed a new son into their home. They have always embodied the American tradition that each generation works and sacrifices today so that the next generation can climb higher mountains tomorrow. That's the example my parents set as I grew up on County Road J near Montpelier, Ohio. Life was not easy for them. Like many families from small towns in the industrial Midwest, we weathered factory closures. Several of my own family members lost their jobs when the machine tool factory they worked at shut down. But they'd faced hard times before. Tough times make you tough and resilient enough to uproot your family, start over, and keep sacrificing for your family's well-being. And that's what they all did. My parents worked hard and never wasted a penny. They routinely made choices that made their lives harder so that they could make my life and my brother and sister's life a little easier. What I saw growing up in rural Ohio was simple but powerful, and it characterized communities across this country too. People worked long hours, forfeiting comfort and leisure so that their families, and especially their children, could enjoy more security and prosperity than they had. These diligent men and women may not have called their daily responsibilities on the factory floors or in the fields the American dream, but that's what it was. That's what they were striving to achieve. I believe this love for family and nation, this aspirational hope that we have, has driven Americans generations to risk their lives and livelihoods so that we could create the freest, most prosperous country in the world. The early settlers didn't sail across the Atlantic's high seas for fun and adventure. They came to build a legacy of opportunity and liberty that their homeland had denied them. But nothing guaranteed their future. They earned it through courage, toil, and sacrifice. Mr. President, I know this. The noise of the 24-hour news cycle that makes it easy to lose perspective when you're here in Washington. I know it does. But if you step into the Capitol Rotunda and you look up at the storied paintings all around that dome, you'll be reminded of an enduring pattern. Americans built this nation through personal sacrifice, often at a steep human cost. In 1620, the settlers at Plymouth faced hunger, disease, and death as they launched into a new world where they hoped to establish religious freedom. In 1776, their descendants picked up that torch by risking everything to break free of a monarchy. When the founders signed the Declaration of Independence, they indeed pledged their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, a wager not just for themselves, but on behalf of their children and future generations. At Valley Forge, liberty nearly froze to death, but those who endured did so to form a more perfect union. They fought not just for freedom, but for justice and peace and the blessings of liberty, for their posterity. That's us. In 1861, Americans turned on one another so they could preserve the nation and abolish slavery. They paid with blood. Then they returned to their fields and their towns and sought to rebuild a more cohesive nation, one capable of innovation, lasting growth, and a new hope. By the early 1900s, Americans led a second revolution, the Industrial Revolution. In a free nation and economy, workers and entrepreneurs built new industries, fought for fairer working conditions, and laid the foundations for prosperity that we enjoy today. Immigrants came through Ellis and Angel Islands with hope in their hearts and the willingness to work hard, and America embraced them. In World War II, young men crossed oceans to fight tyranny. Women stepped onto factory floors to build the arsenal of victory. And when it was all over, they followed their forefathers' faithfulness by coming home and building schools, churches, and businesses. In other words, Mr. President, a future. The greatest generation carried that burden for their children and for ours. The men and women who fought and endured daily hardships during the Second World War, understood what I worry many Americans nearly have forgotten, which is the heavier the load you choose to carry, the higher you can hold your head. And doing what's noble builds confidence. I believe that's true of people and of nations. For nearly 2 centuries, Americans weren't focused on indulgence, but on inheritance. To be clear, I'm not talking about the kind of inheritance measured in dollars, but instead the kind measured in duty, making tomorrow better than today. But Mr. President, you may be tempted to correct me here. Why would I only credit us with 2 centuries of discipline when, after all, we turn 250 years old next year? Let me take a moment to explain. This American ethos endured for most of our history, but I believe something shifted in our culture around the time I was born. Our society began to leverage the security that earlier Americans won for tomorrow in order to avoid the challenges of the day. Courageous people don't do that. Even a few years before I was born, I believe President Kennedy had already begun to detect the shift. In his inaugural address, he implored Americans to do one thing: ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. A nation that once rallied around sacrifice, in war, in rebuilding, in laying foundations for the future, gave way to a new cultural mood. Over time, we stopped asking, what can we build and leave for the ones we love? And we began to ask, what can we claim for ourselves? We became obsessed with what we as individuals are entitled to, and we forgot how to plant the seeds and nurture them until the harvest. The sense of shared responsibility that had defined generations was eroding. Our growing reliance on promises we felt others owed to us meant that we earned less and expected more. We initially built a safety net to protect people in need and our most vulnerable citizens, which is a noble idea and one that I support. But over time, that safety net stretched wider and wider until nearly everybody was lying in it. As the cost of our promises ballooned, we lacked the will to either pay for them or the courage to pare them back. So what did we do instead, Mr. President? We did what previous generations refused to do. We passed the buck by handing the bill off to our children. Instead of sacrificing for the next generation, we passed the burden on to them. It was a convenient deception. Congress created more programs that it wouldn't pay for. Public officials made promises they couldn't keep, and they convinced their constituents that Americans who come of age after us would take care of tomorrow all by themselves. We also fought wars and engaged in foreign interventions without paying for them. It all adds up. And while our national debt kept rising, I'm not just talking about in dollars, America kept experiencing a real character deficit. We weren't just spending money, we were squandering trust, legacy, and time at the expense of the boys and girls who were too young to even vote or recognize a better path than the one we had chosen for them. We soothed ourselves by claiming that we were being compassionate, but we passed on the consequences of our choices to those not yet born. This is not compassion, it's generational theft. In 1967, when I was born, the national debt stood at $330 billion. Today, it's $36 trillion, more than 100 times greater, even after adjusting for inflation. In 2024 alone, we ran a $1.8 trillion deficit. A baby born in America today inherits $106,000 as their share of the national debt on day one. So what happened to American ingenuity, resolve, and discipline? What happened to it? How did a nation, once defined by sacrifice for our kids to become, what happened to a nation that once was defined by sacrifice? Think about that. For our kids to become one that was willing to pilfer their piggy banks. We have some urgent challenges, Mr. President. 21st century Americans are not being asked to storm Normandy's beaches or endure winters at Valley Forge. The task upon us may seem less heroic right now, but it remains both daunting and deeply patriotic. What is that task? To simply stop spending more than we're willing to pay for today. The question isn't just how did America's financial and cultural debt get so deep? It's how can we claw our way out of this financial and cultural hole? The answer comes down to identifying what we value and what we believe is worth the sacrifice. For me, that's my family and my country. I love them both, and I know many of you share those same sentiments. I believe that we only sacrifice for the things we love. I want to repeat that. I believe we only sacrifice for the things we love. That's why it's crucial and consequential that we remind ourselves and instruct our children to love this country, reminding ourselves that this pattern and promise of American liberty forged a noble, innovative nation that is worth loving and worth fighting for. Because why would anyone sacrifice for a nation they don't love or for neighbors they don't feel a patriotic affection for? America has been self-aware from the beginning. We never thought we were perfect. But every generation is supposed to put in the sweat and tears to form a more perfect union. We were the first nation rooted in the confidence that our rights come not from kings or governments, but from God. That we are endowed by our Creator with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's a beautiful thought. That idea is exceptional. This country is exceptional. There are none like it in the world, and we must teach the next generation what our countrymen sacrificed to secure. And that's why this nation is worth loving with an active and enduring patriotism. Loving America doesn't mean agreeing with every policy or politician. It's not required. but it does require being confident in the idea of America and being willing to sacrifice for the cause of this nation. Not in the abstract, but in real ways, by being good stewards of what was handed down to us, and honoring those who came before us by adopting their discipline, and by becoming the kind of neighbors who are willing to work a little harder, take a little less, give a little more, to preserve what has made this country great. Mr. President, I stand here today as the beneficiary of those who sacrificed for me and for all of us. I was blessed to be adopted into a loving home where they taught me that faith, family, freedom, and hard work are the most reliable antidotes for poverty and despair the world has ever known. We are still a nation where a newborn can begin life in a foster home in Detroit, grow up in the rural Midwest, and have the honor of serving as a United States Senator. As Americans, no matter our background, whether we come from abundance or struggle, we have all inherited the gift of freedom, passed down from earlier Americans. We stand on their shoulders. Let's not force the next generation to remember us as the ones who broke the 2 centuries-long chain of self-sacrifice, but rather as the ones who reforged it. To my colleagues and constituents, count me in as one who is willing to do my part, to work hard, forego convenience, and reinforce that chain that will sustain our nation for future generations. I will listen to your ideas, and I hope you will listen to mine. I will operate from the principled belief that we must elevate liberty and personal responsibility above expedience and entitlement, and that our children should not have to pay the price for our lack of discipline. The America I aspire to serve is defined by courage and a love that refuses to take more than it gives. And as it has so many times in our history, may these convictions prevail in this chamber and in the classrooms, boardrooms, break rooms, and living rooms of these United States. Consider this my prayer for our nation, and may God work through us to make it so. Thank you. I yield, Mr. President.
Senator from Ohio.
So I had the opportunity to meet Senator Husted when he was state representative Husted about 15, maybe 20 years ago. I don't want to age myself. And I was down in Columbus meeting a few state reps down there, and I see this guy and go, man, who's that young guy who sounds really, really smart? Walked up to him, introduced myself, and it was Jon Husted. And in that period of time, what I've seen is a great person. He's not just a great public servant. This is somebody who could have spent his entire adult life making a lot of money. He's a very smart and gifted person. Instead, he's dedicated his entire time to actually make this country better. And the reason for that you just heard today. He's somebody who's a deep person of faith, who's a great father, a great husband, and honestly, a great friend. So, look, don't take my word for it. What I'd ask is unanimous consent to enter the following statements from support from fellow Ohioans into the record.
Without objection.
So the senator does not know that I did this, so I think you owe it to hear. So here's just a sampling of what the people in Ohio said based on a simple request. Tell me what you think of Senator Husted. So let me start with the first one. Jon has excelled in every public office he has held, as a legislator, Speaker of the House, Secretary of State, and Lieutenant Governor. I worked with Jon on a daily basis for the 6 years he served as Lieutenant Governor. No one understands Ohio better than Jon. His work on economic development as Lieutenant Governor will have a lasting impact for generations. He has had a great career in public service. However, I am convinced that his service as a United States Senator will be the most important and most impactful for Ohio and for our country. His knowledge of Ohio and his ability to work with others will make him a great United States Senator. Signed, Ohio Governor and former United States Senator Mike DeWine. Second one, Senator Husted embodies everything Ohioans are about: family, hard work, love of country, and service. Ohio is better because of his years of service. Alex Trantofilu, Chairman of the Ohio Republican Party. Next one. Jon was a speaker when I started in the House in 2007. I watched and learned from him, and today I use that knowledge every day in the Ohio legislature. 18 years, pretty impressive. He's a great leader and a great United States Senator. Current Ohio Speaker of the House, Matt Huffman. Next one. From his beginnings in rural Williams County to his leadership in the legislative and executive branch of our state government, Jon Husted made Ohio a better state at every stop. I have no doubt he will do the same for our entire country in the United States Senate. That's from Ohio Senate President Rob McCauley. Next one. Senator Husted is passionate about his faith, his family, his state, and his country. It has been a pleasure watching him grow throughout the years, and without question, he will serve his Senate family with great pride and integrity. That is from current Lieutenant Governor and former The Ohio State football head coach, Jim Tressel. And the last one, during his service at the state level, Jon saw firsthand in great detail the many problems at the federal level, problems that he was powerless as a state officer to solve. He brings that detailed knowledge and his passion for the right thing to do to the United States Senate, and the country will be better for it. Signed, Attorney General of Ohio, Dave Yost. And I'll end with this, Mr. President. Look at what he's already accomplished. I can say a little bit falls here in this chamber. About 8 years ago, I remember sitting with Senator Husted, then Lieutenant Governor, candidate Husted, nominee Husted, in a little office building in downtown Cleveland. He said, I have an idea. It's going to be called Innovate Ohio. I said, Jon, what's that? We're going to put together the leaders of the Ohio innovation ecosystem and make Ohio the most attractive state where you can build and grow a company. And we had our first meeting. So who was in that meeting? Now Senator Jon Husted, now Senator me, Bernie Moreno, soon to be Governor Vivek Ramaswamy, and our third Ohio honorary senator, Vice President J.D. Vance, all hand-selected by Senator Husted to participate 8 years ago in Innovation Task Force. So on nights when we go through Votoramas and we're here for 24, 30 hours, it is you who I have to blame, Senator Husted, for encouraging me to seek public service. But look, I came to D.C. not knowing what to expect, and having somebody who I consider a friend, somebody who I know we can talk about anything and hash things out, has made this job very, very rewarding. Thank you for your service to Ohio. I look forward to serving with you here in the United States Senate. With that, I yield, Mr. President.